Welcome back to the channel. Before I get into this week's movie review, here's me talking with director Ryan Coogler.
Hey Ryan, you're one of my favorite directors, and I think not only for directing but writing. And I think something that you're going to be remembered for is the representation. I think that was huge for me. Like in Black Panther 2, having the first major Mexican character in the MCU was like amazing. Was that something that you set out to do early on, or something that kind of developed over time, like the power of representation?
It's something that I set out to do early on, but it also wasn't something that I consciously thought about, man. I grew up in Oakland, California, like in the '90s, when it was just an incredibly diverse city, man. I wasn't able to travel because I didn't have the money to, but I felt like I had the whole world right outside my door. You know, people from all parts of the world were there, and they were proud of their cultures. You know what I'm saying? And they would share, and we would share with each other. We were over each other's houses, eating each other's food, and listening to each other's music. That was how I grew up. And when I got enough means to travel, and I discovered that Oakland really prepared me for what the world was, man. You know what I mean? I got dropped off in Hong Kong. I'll never forget. And I was like, yo, this is like being downtown San Francisco. You know what I mean? I almost knew my way around. You know, and for me, if I have this ability, this blessing to be able to have a camera and write things that people are going to have an opportunity to go see, I do feel a responsibility to do my best to present the world as it is. You know what I mean? And I always find that rewarding when I'm watching a movie and the world feels like that. So I feel like that's my responsibility to continue to give that to audiences. So it means the world for you to share that with me, bro.
Let's get into it now. A spoiler-free movie review of Sinners starring Michael B. Jordan, who plays two characters. They are called the Smokestack Twins, and they went to Chicago to work for Al Capone, doing some gangster stuff, robbing people, putting bullets in people, and then they decide to move back home to the great state of Mississippi, and they want to open a juke joint. They bring some booze with them from Chicago. They bring some other things you're maybe not supposed to have in the 1930s, and they buy some property with the idea of starting this juke joint to give their community a place where they can go spend money, gamble, party, dance, play music, play the blues, all these things where they can do under a roof where they can find salvation and not be persecuted by anybody, have their own little piece of home in Mississippi. But things aren't going to go as planned, because things never go as planned, especially in the 1930s. This movie is a supernatural action thriller, and even though it does take place in that time period, it doesn't feel like a period piece whatsoever, which is always something I struggle with, and maybe it's because I'm dumb, but anytime a movie is set back in the 30s, it's always hard for me to get through that just dialogue barrier where it feels like people are talking and just saying words just like blah, blah, blah. And it's hard for me to feel the emotion in a story like that. So oftentimes I don't seek out these movies, but you have director Ryan Coogler, who is one of my favorite directors right now. He has earned that level of respect from me. Like, who cares about my level of respect and what I think? But anything he does, any movie he puts out, I am going to go watch it. And this is the fifth time he has worked with Michael B. Jordan, frequent collaborators. That means these guys know each other. Ryan Coogler can probably push Michael B. Jordan in a way that other directors can't. And he probably needed a lot out of him because Michael B. Jordan is playing two characters, Smoke and Stack, the Smokestack Twins. And it was their way of working together that made this movie feel like it was fresh. And that even though it was set back in the 1930s, the dialogue, the interactions with all the other characters felt like it could have been taking place right now, given some of the wardrobe. But I think there's only one other director who has done that in recent history, and that is Quentin Tarantino. He does that a lot. He goes back in time, rewrites history, and still makes it feel fresh, adding in maybe some words that they probably didn't say back in the 30s. But it kind of breaks that barrier a little bit. And it's a really fine line to walk, because sometimes when you do a quote-unquote period piece and you have little inaccuracies here and there, people want to strangle you for it. But in this case, it totally makes sense because Sinners blends these two different genres, maybe even a little bit of three different genres into one movie. And it walks this line of, here's this element of a period piece, but then here's this drama, here's this supernatural thing. You have a bit of horror elements in there. And in 2025, where I started to think that nobody could create a movie that I'd never seen before. And you always hear people wanting to blend genres in a film. Ryan Coogler has done it in a way that exceeded my expectations. And it is so rare to wow me in this way that led me to loving it. The movie felt like three different films in one. And you just can't get that when going to the movies nowadays, where I was so invested in the Smokestack twins and learning about their backstory, seeing them be ruthless, seeing Michael B. Jordan portray two different characters. One who is a little bit more ruthless, a little bit more just, I'm going to rough you up. I don't care who you are. I'm going to prove how hardcore we are. The other who has a little bit more empathy, and that unravels as the film goes along. And two pretty well defined characters, which is hard to do. It is also hard to make a movie where you have one person playing two characters and not have it look weird. And I think it's because I spent a lot of time looking at the screen, trying to pay attention to where Michael B. Jordan was there, and the other one was the superimposed image of him, where they had a stand-in and probably through special effects put his face on his body. I could kind of point that out from time to time, but that's only because I was super hyper-focused into it. I think for the most part, this is the best I've seen it done, because oftentimes you have scenarios where they're placed on two different sides, but you have moments where they need to interact, they need to hand a cigarette to the other one, and you can't really get around that. I will say I did notice different elements of the story that allowed the two characters to be put into different directions. And I think that just becomes a money thing, because the more you spend on having them together in close proximity, having to interact with each other, the more expensive that gets. So that is just clever filmmaking, but in no way was that distracting. Thought they did a really good job with that. Haley Steinfeld is fantastic in this, and I think people really haven't seen how great of an actor she is. And this is one of those roles where I was like, oh, she's actually really good at not only doing the Marvel voice acting stuff that I think has really put her on to another level. Edge of 17 back in the day was one of my favorite coming of age movies, but now I got a totally different look at what she can do, and I love this for her. She was a really great addition to this cast. It just had a lot of standout performances from everybody involved. So the acting was top tier. The cinematography was top tier. This movie was filmed on IMAX cameras. It is made for the big screen. From the first opening scene, which I loved. I love a great opening scene, especially when it's shot for IMAX, because you get this really big scope of Mississippi in the 1930s. The movie opens in a very chilling way where it starts at the end, because the entire movie takes place in one day, which is another category of film I love. But what you see at the very beginning of the movie is actually the ending of the movie. So you see one of the characters, Preacher Boy, go up to the church. He is just covered in blood, looks like he's just been through hell, and he's holding a guitar neck that is broken off. And just the look of him walking into the church, they have these really low angles where you get the entire scope of the church. That scene looked fantastic. From the very beginning of this movie, I knew I was in for something special. And that is exactly what I got. This movie was essentially three different movies in one. And in 2025, where I thought there's no way a director could make a movie that would include things that I'd never seen before done in one film, Ryan Coogler shattered that idea. I thought everything had been done. I think you could still make a great movie, obviously. Otherwise, I would not be on this podcast right now talking about movies. But to go from just an almost straight ahead 1930s drama to a supernatural, almost horror-esque movie by the end of it, and you have these supernatural events happening, you have these moments where it even shatters those genres. There's these really big expositions where Ryan Coogler makes statements on music, makes statements on racial tensions that allow the film to go into these almost fantasy lands. And the entire time, I am riding with them. I don't feel it ever gets too weird, because it always kind of stays grounded, even when it goes very supernatural, very, oh, this is kind of starting to feel like a fever dream. It still wrangles you in because it keeps that emotion. And I just haven't been moved by a film like this in a really long time. This year, it is the first time that I started a movie, didn't know how it was going to get through all these elements, and loved it by the end of it. I love the journey of all of these characters. I think that blending of genres is something that I think the big directors can do and what is going to keep film alive. That is what is going to make it feel like a spectacle, something that you want to pay money to go and see because it leaves nothing on the table in an era right now where some movies are afraid to take a risk because it's going to alienate the audience. It's going to become too unmarketable if you start blending different genres of movies. You include the undead and you include racial tensions and you include fire and you include shootouts. All things can exist and you can make a statement by the end of it, which is something Ryan Coogler has always done. By the end of a Ryan Coogler film, you are going to have a message that he got across to you because not only does he make movies that are entertaining, not only does he make movies that are a pleasure for the eyes, he also makes movies that are so impactful. Think back to how much of an impact Black Panther had on a young kid watching who had never seen a superhero with the color of their skin. That was impactful. Even for me, at that time where I still was probably an adult when that came out. And he did it again for me in Black Panther 2, where we had a Mexican guy playing a villain in a big MCU movie. So he's not only great about getting messages across in his movies, but also including a very diverse cast that has a lasting effect. And I think that is something that transcends just making a great movie, is making a movie with representation on a scale of a big budget movie that is going to reach a lot of people. And I think that's why this one works so well. Sinners was just effortlessly entertaining, and you don't have to be a big fan of horror movies to enjoy this one. I would say if you are okay with the level of gore that you would find in a Walking Dead episode, there is a decent amount of blood, but nothing that's too overly graphic, which I have kind of an interesting relationship with gore and blood because whenever it's in a horror movie, I don't care. It doesn't affect me whatsoever. But Kelsey loves watching medical dramas. And I think it's because those are more realistic, like people getting shot or people getting impaled by something. And you have a doctor performing surgery where blood is gushing out. That is hard for me to watch. That is stressful for me. But she finds so much enjoyment in that. On the other hand, she can't watch a horror movie. If somebody gets like stabbed by Michael Myers or has their head ripped off in a horror movie, she can't do it. She gets freaked out and scared. But when it comes to Sinners, it's not really your traditional horror elements. And I think sometimes when anybody hears that it's a horror movie, you automatically check out because you're like, I don't do scary. I think if you give this one a chance, if you can handle a decent amount of blood with a good little splash of supernatural, I think you can handle the gore and scary elements in Sinners. As far as where it lands on my ranking of Ryan Coogler films, it is really hard to beat one, which is Black Panther for me. That movie I feel is going to have the biggest legacy. It has the biggest imprint on the MCU and was one that was not only great and entertaining, made a bunch of money, but also critically acclaimed. So one, I don't think is ever going to come down from Black Panther. I kind of feel the same way about two, which is Creed. That movie reignited the Rocky franchise. It really made Michael B. Jordan a mega level star and has now spawned, well, an entire rebooted franchise of all the Creed movies that I'm all invested in. If they decide to make another one, I hope Ryan Coogler returns to direct another Creed movie. Number 3, you also can't get away from the emotional impact of Black Panther 2, the passing of Chadwick Boseman, and how that movie not only felt like saying goodbye to the Black Panther character, but also saying goodbye to him as an actor. That top 3 is going to be very difficult to crack. And I love this movie so much, but can't love it more than Black Panther 2. Can't love it more than the first Creed. And I can't love it more than Black Panther. But I do love it right there at number 4. So for Sinners, I give it 4.5 out of 5 smokestacks.